The rain hammered against the windshield like 1,000 desperate fingers as Marcus Johnson guided his battered Honda through the darkness. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel, his mind racing through calculations he'd made 100 times. Before, 3 days until rent was due, Emma's school supplies still unpaid, the electric bill sitting unopened on the kitchen counter. Single fatherhood had become an endless equation that never quite balanced, no matter how many double shifts he pulled at the warehouse. It was past midnight on Route 47, that forgotten stretch of asphalt where streetlights gave up pretending to care. Marcus was exhausted, every muscle in his body screaming for rest. But sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not when his 8-year-old daughter was waiting at home with Mrs. Chen from next door. Not when tomorrow meant another 16-hour day just to keep their heads barely above water. That's when his headlights caught something that made his breath stop cold in his chest. A shape on the roadside. Not an animal, a person. A woman crumpled against the guardrail like a discarded puppet, rain streaming across her motionless form. Marcus's foot hit the brake before his mind could process what he was seeing. The car fishtailed slightly on the wet pavement, coming to a shuddering stop about 20 feet past her. For a heartbeat, he sat frozen. Every practical bone in his body screamed at him to keep driving. He was already late. He had no money for complications, getting involved in someone else's tragedy when he could barely manage. His own seemed like madness. But then he thought of Emma, his little girl with her mother's eyes and her endless questions about why some people helped and others looked away. "Damn it!" Marcus muttered, throwing the car into reverse. He grabbed the emergency flashlight from his glove compartment and burst out into the rain. The cold hit him like a slap, instantly soaking through his thin work jacket. As he got closer, his stomach turned. The woman was young, maybe mid-30s, her face swollen and bruised beyond recognition. Blood mixed with rainwater, creating pink rivers across the pavement. Her designer clothes were torn and muddied, one shoe missing entirely. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, his hands shaking as he checked for a pulse. It was there, faint, thready, but there. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with pain. "Please," she whispered, the word barely audible over the storm. "Help! Me! I've got you!" Marcus said, already pulling out his phone. "I'm calling 911 right now. Just stay with me, okay?" But when he looked at his phone, his heart sank. No signal. Not out here in this dead zone where the highway cut through miles of nothing. The nearest hospital was Memorial General, at least 20 minutes away. 20 minutes she might not have. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "I'm going to move you to my car," he said gently, already assessing how to do this without causing more damage. "This is going to hurt, but I need to get you to a hospital." The woman's eyes widened with terror, and she tried to shake her head. "Can't feel my legs." The words hit Marcus like ice water. Paralyzed. Moving her could make it worse, could sever her spine completely. But leaving her here in the freezing rain wasn't an option either. He was trapped between two impossible choices. "Listen to me," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the panic clawing at his chest. "I'm going to be very, very careful. But we can't wait out here. Do you understand?" A tiny nod. Trust from a stranger who had no reason to trust anyone, with the gentleness he'd learned from years of holding his daughter through nightmares and fevers. Marcus eased his arms beneath the woman. She whimpered, tears mixing with the rain on her face, but she didn't scream. He kept her as straight as possible, moving with agonizing slowness toward his car. Each step felt like miles. By the time he got her settled across the back seat, his arms were trembling and his heart was hammering, so hard he thought it might burst. He peeled off his jacket and tucked it around her, then cranked the heat to maximum. In the rearview mirror, her face was deathly pale. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, tearing through the darkness toward the distant glow of the city. "Sarah," she managed. Sarah Mitchell. The name meant nothing to him. He kept talking anyway, knowing he had to keep her conscious. "I'm Marcus. I've got a little girl named Emma. She's 8. Obsessed with horses even though we've never been able to afford riding lessons. She'd probably want me to tell you that everything's going to be okay. Is it? Sarah's voice was so small. Yes, Marcus lied, pressing harder on the accelerator. Yes, it is. He ran 2 red lights getting to Memorial General, pulling up to the emergency entrance with his horn blaring. Medical staff swarmed the car like white-clad angels. Marcus tried to explain. Found her on Route 47. Beaten. Can't feel her legs. Been maybe 15 minutes, but the words tumbled out in a jumbled mess. They lifted Sarah onto a gurney with practiced precision, and then she was gone, swallowed by the fluorescent brightness of the hospital. A nurse touched Marcus's arm. "Sir, we need information." "Is she family?" "No, I found her. I don't know anything. The police will need to speak with you." Of course they would. Marcus glanced at his watch, nearly 1 in the morning. Mrs. Chen would be worried sick. His shift started at 6. But he couldn't leave, not until he knew Sarah would survive. The police came, 2 detectives with tired eyes and harder questions. They took his statement, examined his hands and clothes, ran his ID. Marcus understood. In their eyes, he was the most likely suspect. The man who found a beaten woman was often the man who'd beaten her. He answered every question with patience he didn't feel, volunteered his phone, his work schedule, anything they needed. Detective Williams, a grey-haired woman with a face that had seen too much, finally nodded. "Your story checks out. The highway cameras caught you driving past, stopping and going back. You probably saved her life, Mr. Johnson. Is she going to make it? Too early to say, but you did good tonight." It was 3 in the morning when Marcus finally made it. Home. Mrs. Chen met him at the door, her wrinkled face creased with concern. "You look like death, Marcus. What happened?" He told her everything while she made tea he didn't drink. When he finally stumbled into Emma's room, his daughter was sprawled across her bed in her favorite unicorn pajamas, clutching the stuffed bear that had been her mother's last gift. Before the cancer took her. Marcus pressed a kiss to her forehead and whispered, "Your dad's trying, baby girl." "He's trying." The next days passed in a blur of work and worry. Marcus called the hospital twice a day for updates. Sarah Mitchell was stable but critical, spinal trauma, multiple fractures. She'd been beaten with systematic brutality, her attacker still unknown. The police had identified her. She was a social worker who ran a non-profit helping domestic violence survivors. The awful irony wasn't lost on Marcus. He couldn't afford to visit, couldn't afford the time away from work or the gas money for the drive. But he called, and somehow that felt important. It was a week later when Detective Williams showed up at the warehouse during Marcus's lunch break. His heart plummeted. Had something happened to Sarah? "She's awake," Williams said, and something like a smile cracked her stern features. "And she's been asking for you. Says she needs to meet the man who saved her life." Marcus stared. "I can't just leave work." "Your supervisor already cleared it. Go." The hospital room was full of flowers and balloons, but Sarah Mitchell looked smaller than he remembered, dwarfed by the medical equipment surrounding her bed. Her face was still swollen, but her eyes, green and startlingly clear, found him immediately. "Marcus," she said, and started crying. He moved to her bedside, awkward and uncertain. "Hey, you're awake." "That's great. How are you feeling?" "Alive," Sarah said simply. "Because of you. The doctor said if I'd been out there another hour..." She couldn't finish. "You don't have to thank me." "But I do." She reached for his hand with the one that wasn't in a cast. "The detective told me about you. Single father, working yourself to death to take care of your daughter. You had every reason to drive past me that night. But you didn't." Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone would have done the same. "We both know that's not true." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "Marcus, I've spent my entire career helping people escape violence. And when I needed help, you were there. A stranger who owed me nothing. I need you to know that means everything." They talked for an hour. Sarah told him about her work, about the shelter she'd founded 5 years ago. She'd been attacked by the ex-husband of one of her clients, a man who blamed her for his wife leaving him. He was in custody now, facing charges that would put him away for decades. Marcus told her about Emma, about the daily struggle to be enough for his daughter when he felt like he was failing every day. Sarah listened with the intensity of someone who'd learned how to truly hear people. When visiting hours ended, Sarah stopped him at the door. "Marcus, I'm going to be in physical therapy for months. The doctors say I might walk again, but it's going to be a long road. But I'm going to get through it. And when I do, I want to do something for you. You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not. But I want to anyway." 3 months later, Marcus got a letter. Sarah had recovered enough to return to work part-time. Her non-profit had received a major grant, and she was expanding. She was offering Marcus a position, administrative work, coordinating donations and volunteer schedules, better pay, regular hours, health insurance for him and Emma, the kind of job that would let him be a father instead of just a provider. "Why me?" Marcus asked when he called her, his voice thick with emotion he couldn't hide. "Because you proved that kindness still exists," Sarah said. "Because you saw someone suffering and you helped, even when it cost you. That's the kind of person I want working with people who've lost faith in humanity. You reminded me why I do this work, Marcus. Let me give something back." Marcus stood in his kitchen, looking at Emma doing homework at their scratched table, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Real, tangible hope. "When do I start?" 6 months after that rain-soaked night, Marcus attended the opening of Sarah's expanded shelter. She walked with a cane now, each step hard-won through months of agonizing therapy, but she walked. Emma was there too, clutching Marcus's hand, her eyes wide at all the important-looking people. Sarah spotted them and made her way over, her smile brighter than all the camera flashes. "There's my hero," she said, pulling Marcus into a careful hug. "I'm not a hero," Marcus protested, but Sarah shook her head. "You are to me, and to every person whose life will be changed. Because you showed me that goodness still exists in this world." She knelt down to Emma's level, wincing slightly. "Your dad is an extraordinary man. I hope you know that." Emma nodded seriously. "I do. He's the best dad ever." As Marcus watched Sarah greet the other guests, sharing her story of survival and the stranger who'd refused to look away, he finally understood what she'd been trying to tell him. He hadn't just saved one life that night. He'd reminded everyone who heard the story that humanity still mattered, that one person's choice to care could ripple outward in ways impossible to measure. On the drive home, Emma chattering excitedly about the party, Marcus thought about that rainy night and the impossible choice he'd faced. He'd been so afraid of making things worse, of getting involved, of caring when he barely had anything left to give. But he'd stopped anyway. He'd helped anyway. And somehow, in saving someone else, he'd found a way to save himself.